Okay, all right, thank you everyone. We're going to go ahead and do a quick tutorial on how to create an ombre set of glow rings for the glass and stone concentric ring mold. And normally with when I'm using fine frit, I don't necessarily measure everything out. I just fill everything up to the tops of the channels for fine frit. However, with this, we're adding glow powder in several colors, so I'm actually going to weigh this. So my favorite tool for filling the glow rings is a condiment bottle with the cap cut off at an angle. So the total number of grams for an 8-inch circle mold is 162 grams. So what I'm going to do is to start by putting my container on the scale, changing it to grams, whoops, and then adding, what I'm probably going to do is about 150 grams of fine frit. This is Spectrum or Oceanside water clear. And you can use icicle clear or even just the normal clear if you want, depending on the colors that you want to get out of it. So basically I'm just filling this up to 150 grams. When I'm doing the ring molds, the rainbow ring molds, I have separate containers for each color. But for this ombre, generally what I do, I always have a little bit left over, is I go ahead and weigh out how much frit I know I'm going to need, and then have a little bit extra for the next one. And because it's kind of a gradual color change between the rings, it's okay if it's not precise. So we're almost there. I guess it's about 10 grams per scoop, huh? This is a dessert drizzle spoon. You can get them on Amazon, or pretty much any restaurant supply store, and it will help you direct the frit to where you want it to go. So that's fine frit, and I'm also going to add a little bit of water clear powder to get it up to the 162. I've found that when you're using glow powder, because it doesn't melt, having a little bit of powder from the powder glass helps keep everything mixed in and keeps it from separating out as much. So if we wanted to do 10% glow powder, that would be 16 grams of glow. So this is Art and Glow. Is it focused on?
Yep.
Okay. So if you follow this link, you can get a free sample and then 20% off your first order. I don't get anything from it. It's just that this works for fusing. You want to get the neutral colors. This is neutral aqua. They also sell fluorescent colors, but the fluorescent colors have dyes in them, which may not necessarily be kiln safe. So we've talked with the proprietors of Art and Glow, and the neutral colors are what you want to go for. For the glow powder, if you go more than about 10%, then you'll end up with a really rough surface on your rings, and you'll be able to feel the texture on there, which I don't really like. And actually,
Not gonna have enough, huh?
I think it should be okay. So we're looking for 16, but even if we don't quite have enough, that's still I think gonna be okay. Okay, so we ended up with 13 grams, and that's okay. Push that in there, okay. And so for the ombre rings, basically what I do, I've got 3 different colors. The first one is Oceanside teal green, and I use powders One of the things that's important when you're using powders is to make sure not to breathe it. So go ahead and use a mask when you're working with powders because it does get into the air. So I just added 1 scoop of this, and I'm going to go ahead and close it up and then shake it.
So that 1 scoop was 7 grams.
Yeah. And it's not critical how much you put in there for the color. It's just how strong you want the colors to be. So generally with the ring mold, I start filling from the center out. My ring mold is on a turntable, and I have 2 little bars on it that used to be the supports. This used to be a spice carousel, and I've got the 2 little bars on it just to make it easier to lift the mold. I generally start filling from the inside and go out, and that way I'm not taking this full bottle of frit and moving it over rings that I've already filled. Oops. Okay, so I kind of made a mess of that, but I'm going to go ahead and move some of it in. Because this is an ombre ring, it doesn't really matter so much if some frit gets into a channel that you didn't intend. But I use this wax vacuum if it's something that's important or colors that would not work well together, to just go ahead and vacuum it out. And it's fairly easy to do. One of the things that you want to be careful of is not to push too much of the zip into the ring. Okay, so now we have our first ring. Now I'm going to take my jar and just add a 2nd scoop of the teal green. And then shake it up again. So this basically starts a gradual color change by adding more and more of the colored powder. One of the things too about the glow powder is it does add a little bit of opacity. It makes it a little bit harder to see through the rings, and that's okay because the glow rings are cool. It's just something that you need to understand that is one of the impacts of having other things in there. So you can flatten these out. I'm going to do these to a full fuse, so I'm not too worried about it being uneven. If you're doing the low volume schedule or the cooler schedule, I would be more careful about making sure that the tops of the rings are flat. Okay, so now I'm going to add a scoop full of blue topaz transparent. And I will end up with some extra glass left over, and that's okay. I just use it for my next ombre ring. Let me shake it up. So these charge in natural sunlight or UV light or black light. And the glow is actually fairly strong. We had, we did some testing with the glow powder, and the glow powder that was charged in the sun ended up going for like 6 hours. Obviously it fades after, after time, but it's still pretty cool looking. Okay, so here's another scoop of the topaz blue transparent. One of the things also that's important is if you have, if you're using anything but fine frit, you need to be careful not to overfill the rings. the glass needs to be able to move in the channels as it's cooling, because the ceramic mold and the glass cools at different rates and expands and contracts at different rates. And so you're going to want to make sure that there's enough room. So weighing the glass is not so important on fine frit because it traps so much airspace that it's really difficult to overfill the rings. But if you're using coarse frit, it's super easy, or if you're using Murini or rod, it's super easy to overfill them. And what will happen is basically as the glass contracts faster than the ceramic does, and you'll end up cracking the channels in between the rings. So, okay. So now I am going to add some dark blue transparent. The turntable and the condiment bottles make it pretty fast to fill the rings. And especially when I'm using just like the standard colors, I have these condiment bottles mixed up of half fine clear and half colored clear, so that it's really fast and easy to fill these if you're making a lot of them. For the stronger colors like violet and red, instead of using fine powder, or fine frit for the color, I use powdered, and that way the particles are smaller and the ring ends up looking more evenly colored instead of spotty. And one more scoop. Actually, I'm going to fill that in a little bit more. Make this a little thicker. We started with the fill weight, and we've added a bunch of powders and the glow powder to it. So I will have extra at the end, and that is just fine by me because I'll just use it in my next set. I'd also don't worry about cleaning up the edges of the channels too much either, just because it'll bead up or it'll be pulled into the channel. So anything that's on the edge will either pull in when it's fusing, or it'll bead up and it'll be removed when I clean the mold. One of the other things that you have to be somewhat careful about when you're using powders and fine is that they settle differently. And the coarser frit, in this case the fine frit, will move towards the top more. And so sometimes when you first start your pour, you'll get mostly the clear fine frit coming out. And so I found that if I start turning the mold while I'm filling that first part, while it's starting to get flowing from the condiment bottle, that if I do it while it's turning, then it's not noticeable. If you just do it in one spot, then sometimes that one spot will look more clear than the rest of the ring, and you lose some of the uniformity. Oops, woo! It's starting to get to the corner, so it's starting to get a little crazy. I had to tip the bottle up a little bit more and then it started coming out faster. Come on out. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of flatten this out just so it's a little more defined. And because we're gradually transitioning from one color to the next, it's really forgiving. Just going through and seeing any places that were a little bit low on this outer ring. This is one of the first molds that we started testing with for the pre-orders. And so this is made from a different clay body than what we've settled on. We had more problems with cracking with this clay body, but I've used this mold hundreds of times and it's still working well. So, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this out to the kiln and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done.